Hello guys, it's me Thales. Here we are for another video right from our series Intermediate Advanced English, okay? So, we will continue studying the verb prefer and its synonym, would rather, right? We saw many things about it the last video, and now we have more examples and more situations to cover. But before we begin, remember to subscribe to the channel, right? We have more than 100 videos available and they are organized by topics. You just check the highlight of the video to find out what the video is about. And so you can review your English, you can study together with me and learn something more. Every video I record, actually, I learn something. So it's impossible to study English without learning something else. English is a fabulous language and there is much to be studied. Even though I have studied English ever since I was a child, yes, but our learning has no end, okay? It's endless. Let's get going now with our video. Okay, so we will see, remember our last video. If you haven't seen our videos, please do so, right? Watch my videos. And there is a video which covers the verb prefer and would rather. And this video is part 1 and the video I'm talking about, and the video I'm recording right now will be part 2, okay? All right. I'd prefer. Is it possible to use the verb would with the verb prefer? Yes. I'd prefer is the same of I would prefer. Okay? We saw that we use the verb prefer when we refer to a specific situation, right? Would prefer. For example, I'd prefer to drink wine. Okay, there are many options available. You suggest many things for me to drink, and I choose to drink wine. I'd prefer to drink wine. So this is very specific, okay? But when you say I prefer, how can I say, I prefer tea. When I go to a restaurant, I prefer to drink tea, for example, right? Iced tea. I like iced tea. I prefer iced tea to soda, for example. It means that in general, right? In general situations, I prefer to drink iced tea. But when you say I'd prefer, it means that in a specific situation, you prefer something to something else, okay? For example, another example, I'd prefer to take a cab to go there, right? We want to go to a party, or we want to go to an event which was planned, and I say I'd prefer to take a cab to go there. Is it possible to use ing here? No. So would prefer to do something is the structure and it's mandatory to use the preposition to here. But on the other hand, when we use I prefer, it's possible to say I prefer to do something, or I prefer doing something. You can use both, right? When you have I prefer. When you have I'd prefer, it's not possible to use another verb with ing, okay? And remember, when you use the expression rather than, after the expression rather than, the verb comes in the infinitive form, okay? In the bare infinitive. So, for example, when I say, here I say, I'd prefer to take a cab. You can say, for example, I'd prefer to take a cab rather than take a bus. So here, after the expression rather than, you don't use a verb with ing, okay? Yes, there are many rules to memorize, I know that. It sucks, but you will learn. I could say that you will learn eventually, if by repetition, right? By seeing many examples. Sometimes I make some, it's possible that I make some mistakes, but then I learn from my mistakes. So that's the spirit. Don't worry if you make some mistakes. The main purpose of studying English is to communicate, to be able to deliver an idea. If you are able to do so, don't worry, right? The grammar, the correct spelling, the correct pronunciation, and the correct writing, spelling, speaking will come if you dedicate hard enough, okay? So it will happen to everybody. Now let's see another expression, which is I'd rather. I'd rather is I would rather. When you use I would rather, is it possible to use with ing? Would rather plus a verb. The verb comes in the infinitive without to. For example, I'd rather go out tomorrow. Someone asks me to go out today and I say, no, I guess not. I'd rather go out tomorrow, okay? You use the verb in the infinitive. So just remember, let's remind when we use the infinitive. When you use I'd prefer, it's possible to use the verb to, the preposition to, and only, this is the only choice available. I'd prefer to do something. I would prefer to do something. When you use prefer, on the other hand, you have two options. You can use either ing or the verb in the infinitive, using the preposition to. But on the other hand, if you use I'd rather, the verb comes without preposition, okay? I'd rather go out tomorrow. Let's see something else here. Let me see. It has the same meaning, okay? I prefer to go out tomorrow. You can replace it by its synonym. I prefer to go out tomorrow. Or you could say, I would prefer to go out tomorrow. When you use I would prefer, there is no option. You can only use the verb in the infinitive using preposition to. When you use I prefer to do something, it's possible to use I prefer to go or I prefer going. I don't use very often I prefer going, right? so I avoid making mistakes anyway. But it's correct here. In general, you use preposition to with both prefer and would prefer, and with I'd rather, you use the verb without preposition to, okay? It's also possible to use the I would rather in the negative, and it's different and you have to pay attention to it, okay? You say, I'd rather not go out today. Okay, I'd rather not go out. So you put the negative, the adverb of which will express a negative idea here. I would rather not. You can even give short answers using I would rather not. For example, when I ask you, do you want to go out? No, I'd rather not. It's a short answer. It's very effective. And I learned it by reading texts, and sometimes when I watch TV series, I see people expressing this way. So I learned it in a natural way. I didn't, how can I say, I didn't make an effort to memorize the rules, okay? So that's the right way to learn English, when you see and you learn by examples. You can also say, would rather do something. And, for example, I'd rather, how can I say? I'd rather drink beer. I'm trying to make this sentence. I'd rather drink beer than drink wine. Right? I like alcoholic beverages, and I'd rather drink beer than drink wine. You see, this expression is different. You say, I would rather do something than do something else. This structure is interesting. I would rather do something than something else. You see, when you use I would rather, you use than. I would rather do something than something else. When you use I prefer, you say I prefer to do something, prefer to do something to something else. You can use then. It's possible. I prefer, no, not then, but you can use rather than, right? I prefer to do something rather than do something else. It's also possible. Is it complicated? I guess not. It's not so complicated. Let's see another example here. When you say, for example, I prefer, I guess I gave you this, an example similar in the last video. I prefer to live. I prefer to live in an apartment. To a house, for example. So I prefer to do something to something else. Okay. You can also use I prefer to live here rather than live in the countryside. Yeah. Yes, I don't like the countryside, so I prefer to live here in a big city rather than live in the countryside. So here you don't put ing, okay? I prefer to live in an apartment to a house is possible. You prefer something to something else. But when you say you prefer to do something rather than do something else, you use this expression. You can't say, I prefer to live in an apartment to live in a house. No. I guess that's it. Let me see if there is something else we have to cover here. So you see the differences. Let's summarize. When you have I would rather go out with you. You can use, you use the verb without preposition to. I'd rather not, you put the not word between rather and the main verb, okay? When you say, I'd rather do something than something else, you use the particle, the word than. I'd rather drink beer than drink something else. I prefer to do something to something else. And you can say like this, these expressions are similar in a way, right? I prefer to do this rather than something else. Or, sorry, I prefer to live here rather to somewhere else. Or if you put the verb in the expression here, if you want to use the verb, you change to rather than. So I prefer to live here rather than live in the countryside, okay? Okay, there is more. We haven't finished it yet, but I guess this video is too lengthy. We have to stop. But don't worry. Next video, I expect us to see examples, more examples, and there are more rules to check because there is much to cover about these verbs, okay? So I hope you had a good time and I see you next video. Bye bye.